Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Lush Foliage. So this is going to be a voiceover video because as you heard it is very windy on my terrace today. You won't be able to hear any single word that I'm going to be talking about this beautiful foliage plant's care tips. So today we are talking about a very beautiful foliage plant called as the Philodendron Burle Marx. It is an absolutely beautiful plant, tends to do quite well indoor and outdoor as well. Now this plant is native to South America. It ranges from Colombia, Ecuador and the tropical jungles of Brazil. Now guys, the word tropical itself should give you a fair idea of what this plant needs and what are the requirements of this plant. By now you should be able to judge with the habitat or the native of the plant, and you have to give the care requirements accordingly. And that's what we are going to be talking in this video. So first, let's start with the light requirements. Now guys, this is the most important part. This plant will not do quite well in a very low light or in a dark place. It prefers a good amount of indirect bright light, dappled sunlight or filtered sunlight. Do not keep this plant in direct sunlight, otherwise the leaves will get burnt, be it morning direct sunlight or afternoon direct sunlight. Give it a good amount of indirect bright light and the plant will do quite well. If you're going to keep this plant in a low light condition, then that is going to stun the growth. So please ensure that wherever you are keeping it indoor, keep it in a place east facing window, but ensure that the morning sun does not directly fall onto the leaves, but there is a good amount of light. Now this is an epiphyte plant, which means that it can either be grown in pot or you can put it onto a pole. You can see these are all the aerial roots. These will attach itself onto the pole. Whether it's a moss pole, coir pole or a coir row pole, any of that will work. I prefer to keep it in the pot. It will do quite well. It will grow very bushy. Now guys, talking about the soil requirements, you have to ensure that you are giving it a good amount of organic rich soil, which is well draining, loose and porous. As usual, I tend to use the same soil mix which I use for my other plants, which is a mix of coco peat, garden soil, sand and perlite. Coco peat is to retain slight amount of moisture because this plant prefers a little bit of moisture in the soil. It doesn't like to be sitting in dry soil for a longer period of time. It needs well draining soil because the plant cannot sit in wet soil or soggy wet soil for a longer period of time. Otherwise, the plant will have a root rot. So ensure that you are using a well draining soil. That can be easily achieved with a little bit of sand or perlite. Garden soil is important because that tends to give the natural nutrients and it tends to retain a little bit of moisture along with coco peat, and that is going to work out really well for the plant. And the plant prefers a slightly acidic soil. So the plant is going to do quite well in a very loose, well draining, porous and a little bit of organic rich soil mix. Now talking about watering, ensure that you check at least the upper 1 to 2 inch of the soil is dry. This is during the summers. You will have to check if you tend to feel that the upper layer of soil is dry. Go ahead and do a complete watering until the water starts passing through the drain hole. Now guys, remember the pot has to have a drain hole. You cannot let the plant sit in soggy wet soil, otherwise that will lead to root rot. The soil has to be dry and then go ahead and water it. During summers, which is their growing period, you will have to do a little bit more frequent watering as compared to the winters. During winters, cut down on your watering. Again, this all depends upon your environment and climate. You would be in a better place to judge when and when not to water. Talking about temperature and humidity, as I said, this plant is native to a tropical environment, so it prefers a slightly warmer temperature. Ideally 25 to 35 degrees Celsius is going to work out really well. And during winters, the plant does not like a lot of cold environment, so it will tend to go partial dormant. Now, if you are from a place wherein you have extreme temperatures both during summers and winters, it's best to grow the plant indoor so that the plant does not get damaged. Especially during winters, if you have very extreme winters, then move your plant indoor and grow it in a place where it gets a good amount of indirect but bright light. This plant does love a lot of humidity. Anything that is going to be above 60% of humidity, the plant will do quite well. You can even keep it in your bathroom or bedroom as long as there is a good amount of indirect bright light. Even in a lot of people's bathroom, there is a good amount of indirect bright light. So if you are a person like that and you want to keep a plant in the bathroom where there is a good amount of indirect bright light, then you can definitely keep this plant. It will love the humidity that is in the bathroom. Now guys, talking about how to propagate this plant, it is pretty simple to propagate this plant. As you can see, there are going to be a couple of nodes on this plant. This is a new growth that is coming up, so you can do a root division, or the best method, if you do not want to take out the entire plant from the pot, you will find nodes like this. I have already spoken about this earlier as well in the philodendron video as well, where exactly to cut the nodes. You have to just cut 1 centimeter beneath the node, and then you can either put it in water, or you can put it in leca, or you can directly put it into the soil. It will start to root. Again, the rooting completely depends upon your environment and climate. There is no set time when the roots will appear. So it's pretty simple to propagate them, either by root division or by cutting it just beneath the nodes. It can be easily propagated. Now, talking about pest issues, yes, philodendrons do get affected with spider mites, mealybugs, scale insects, so it's always better to do a routine check. Usually the plant is also affected with these white flies that tend to sit underneath the leaves, so it's always better to do a routine check once in 2 weeks or once in 3 weeks. Check the underneath of the leaves. If you happen to see any white flies or any kind of spider mites, you can always go with any organic solution that you have been using for your plants. Now guys, another important thing, talking about fertilizers, because as I said, this plant kind of grows in a tropical jungle. It prefers a slightly acidic soil, which is very rich in organic matter. So during the summers or during the spring, you can give a liquid fertilizer or whatever fertilizer you have been using. You'll have to give it to the plant during the growing season, which is the summers or spring. And during winters, I would advise do not add any fertilizers. Just completely stop adding fertilizers to the plant, because during winters it might go partial dormant or complete dormant depending upon your environment and climate. Liquid based fertilizer is going to work out really well. I tend to give compost tea. You can even opt for seaweed solution as well. Ensure you dilute it completely and then give it for the plant during the summers. You can do it either once a month or once in 2 months depending upon the size of the plant. The most important question, is this plant toxic? Yes, philodendron varieties are toxic, so ensure that you're keeping this plant away from the reach of small children and pets. Even when you're doing a propagation, ensure that you are using gloves, because remember, like the philodendron Burle, which I had a rash on my hand after cutting the node, I had touched the sap. So you have to be extremely careful. The sap can irritate the skin, especially if you have very delicate skin. So ensure that you're keeping this plant away from the reach of small children and pets. And also, when you're doing propagation, be very careful. Wash your hands after you have done any kind of propagation or stem cutting of a philodendron. So guys, overall, it's a very easy to grow plant. If you are a beginner, you want a foliage plant, a dark colored foliage plant, which is very easy to take care, then you can definitely add the Philodendron Burle Marx in your collection and it will do wonders. It's a very fast growing succulent, especially during summers. It is going to have a very good growth. So guys, I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. And if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe and keep propagating.